All right. So what's going on, Andrew?
You're doing magic, Tom.
Yeah, well, it's not.
This word magic with a K. What the
Yes,
hell is that? What are you trying to pull on people? What is this? What is your con here?
that's a good question because there's a book from two psychologists. It's called The Structure of Magic, and it's just a C. And this book, it's a bible of neurolinguistic programming, and it's basically about linguistic speech patterns and therapeutic means. And they called it. They wrote this famous book in the 70s or 80s, or I don't 80s, late 80s,
Hmm.
and they called
Yeah,
it
I have
this.
that book.
And they called it The Structure of Magic. It's a fantastic book. And I was
There's two
like, okay,
volumes, right?
yeah, exactly. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's interesting. So, but I just don't want to copy it straight away. So I put a K after that and called it a view into the ecology of psyche because I'm less concerned with the esoteric aspect and the linguistic aspect, but more like, okay, so how do we create the experience of self and world in the first place? So the
Hmm.
ecology of psyche, and it's a so that's the train I'm running.
And that was co-written by Bandler, and it was part of the
Exactly.
neuro linguistic programming.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right, right, right. This is how to
Richard,
pick up chicks, basically. So that's the
they
whole
they
point.
made it out of this. Yes, the pickup community like learned their tricks from that.
From
Mm.
Bandler, yeah.
From these
And
linguistic maneuvers.
okay, so what's the relationship between Bandler and Crowley's with Magic with a K?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Crowley just I mean, there's certainly a Kabbalistic thing in the K, but I think he also
Hmm.
did like to distinguish it from the Aeon of Horus, no, Osiris, which is magic just with a C, to the more postmodern kind of K kind of thing. And so he just wanted to indicate this new Eon, the Eon of Horus, which is a more phallic approach to all of this. And phallic, I don't necessarily mean like a genital phallic, but more like metaphysical phallic approach to magic. And so that was the reason why he put a K behind it.
And by metaphysical, phallic, you mean the will, I think, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So,
the predominance of will, and it's not so. Yeah. So he in his mind, the last 2,000 years were the age of Osiris, the dying god, with a paradigm of love, basically. And so
mhm.
everything is and in his view, and it's not. And so I mentioned this in episode 2 because when I talk about the will, because there's the whole substream of Mithraitic cults that were always kind of based on the idea that Mithras was changing the paradigms of the cosmos every 2,000 years, and the image of Mithras and killing the bull is him being steering the cosmos into the age of Aquarius, basically.
Mhm, mhm,
And so,
mhm.
and for Crowley, it was like after these 2,000 years, now the age of Horus and the will and love under will. That is like love being guided by will and will being softened by love in a kind of way. That age starts now. In in
Hmm.
in,
So
in,
that
in
is, in a way, that's kind of like individuation or something like that as well, isn't it? Or I mean, that's the age of individuation rather than. So I'm just trying to relate this idea of will is like you're individuated when you are in a creative process with the world, rather than you are just the big. You are just sucking on the tit of the world. If that
right.
makes any sense.
Right. And so you have like from Robert Keegan this concept of self-authorship, right?
Yes.
And so which roughly maps to an integral or metamodern or whatever stage, like the stage where you like autonomous and you like uh, have like this self-critical thing, not self-critical in the sense of your bad father, but it's like you are like able to observe your narratives and perspectives and kind of kind of put them in the right place, and steer that whole thing, and be self-authoring in the sense that you don't just copy the ways of, what is traditionally being offered by society, but you can create your own life. And so this is also the idea that permeates the idea of will and self-authorship after modernity, let's say. And so you have the idea of individuation and maturation and all of this.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking recently about this paradigm shift thing and what it entails, right? And again, the image of the falling towers comes in very strong here. That the towers that are erected of the old aeon suddenly start to come down, and you could use September 11th as a kind of metaphor for that,
right?
And then this reveals all the horrors, right? But also it also lays the ground for a new world.
Yeah.
I'm speaking metaphorically. I mean, we're talking metaphorically in a sense when we're talking about these 2,000-year cycles, and we can take that as literally as we want. We could talk about the Kali Yuga, and I don't know if you know about the Kali Yuga. Have you studied that a bit? Like where the Kali Yuga is an interesting time because it's the end of one cycle and the beginning of the other. So it's the end of the cycle. You can see the new world sparkling through in the collapse of the old.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Kind of feels where we are at.
Yeah, it's like interesting because you mentioned, the Twin Towers, or you alluded to them, because it's like Francis Fukuyama spoke of the end of history, because it's like, okay, we have found like a stable way of organizing ourselves in democracy. And that was like, when did you write it? End of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. And then of course there was the Twin Tower and the fell and of the towers, and showing that indeed the history is not at its end, and
well, one epoch is at its end. One movement of history might be at its end, which would be a better way to interpret the thing. One cycle of history is at its end, and the new cycle is kind of beginning.
And so what I mean, and I think like that would, in reworking all that, what I have written, and for this kind of series, what kind of resonates again with me is like the distinction between, okay, so there's this world, the objective world, which you might measure physically or whatever. And then there are like our interpretations and our experience of the world and ourselves, and that there's a difference, I think the old age, and if you have like a modernistic kind of thinking, so the old age is that you think you live in the world, and that your senses create a more or less true representation of what the world is. And that was like the modernist kind of paradigm, that we lived with in the last 2,000 years. And what I was trying to, and then in the end of the 60s, 70s, there were like cybernetics and systems theory and Maturana and Varela that kind of showed, the nervous system is creating its own realities independently of, basically independently of what photons enter our, let's say, the background of our eyes. So there's like an autopoietic mechanism. And so our internal representation, also psychologically speaking, Luhmann did this like 20 years later, that he applied autopoiesis to consciousness. That's like, okay, now we're creating a world, and this world that we're living in, that we are structurally coupled to the physical world, but we can't talk about, we are in the world. And so what Maturana said, we're not in the world anymore. We are with the world. The world is not our mother. We are not in a cave, but she is more like our wife we are dancing with, right? And so it's like this idea that...
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
There's an idea that there's a big difference between the idea of we are in the world and we represent the world on our senses, and oh no, we can't really leave our realm of cognition. And this realm of cognition, of how we construct our notions and ideas of self and world, this is a complete construction. That was like this constructivist thought from Maturana and Varela and systems theory that, started the paradigm shift from 2000 years thinking of, oh no, that is the real world. We don't have access to the real world. That's the crucial point here that I'm trying to make, that we only have access to our, let's say, constructions, that we have. And when I
still resist that slightly. I somewhat resist that slightly because it's removing all essentiality from anything, right? And I'm not sure. So I agree and I disagree. There's a way in which I disagree. I don't know how to say that, but there's a way with which I feel that that's still in the postmodern realm of lack of essentiality of anything.
No, it doesn't. No, it sounds like if it's a bad thing, but it adds some other essentiality, namely the predominance of psyche and consciousness. It just, it's a different. So, but it's like not everything that postmodernity and that kind of shift happen is necessarily bad, because like everything that we know stems from Kybernetics and system theory. Like you can take 80, 90, 95% of everything that Ken Wilber wrote and find it in systems theory.
Oh, like I agree. Yeah.
And so like our whole thinking, even the idea of emergence, that comes from complexity theory and systems theory. So like that kind of thinking permeates everything that we're dealing with. It just says that no, psyche and the nervous system are constructing their own reality. That isn't solipsism, because it argues, the classical system theoretic approaches that the worlds and the systems are kind of structurally coupled, or coupled. But it doesn't. But you can't leave your realm of cognition. You can't partake in the production of my thinking. You can't. Right? Okay. Or can you make me think?
But is there a certain pattern that we share together that between us that has universal qualities?
Yeah, we can dance with each other, like verbally, or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you were talking, I was thinking about, the change is like from being in the cave. We're not in the cave. So that is the world let's say, of the Middle Ages, where you are a child of God, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And the reference point is God, not you. In a way, the ultimate reference point is God. And then we move into the Renaissance and humanism, where the ultimate reference point becomes you, right, in your world. And then we move into, like, say, 19th century, or we move into like Impressionism and Cubism, where we're deconstructing once again this and the quantum fields and things like that. We're deconstructing once again identity to be something that is malleable, and that is so you are not separate from. You're not the child of God. You partake in God, or you are dancing with God, or you are a dance partner of God. Or you're a so yeah. That's how I see it in those movements. And so but with all of those stages, there's a pitfall, right? And in the first stage, the pitfall is that you're just sucking on the big tit of God forever, and you never develop any identity whatsoever. And then the pitfall of the modern age is like, okay, you believe only in your limited human construct. You're kind of like, it's kind of like Ayn Rand or something. It's like that you believe only in individuality, and then you move into the next period, and the next period is sort of like you can fall very easily into nihilism. So I guess my question is, if we lose, if we deconstruct everything and we see that, well, we're only, within subjectivity, pure subjectivity or whatever, then how do we not fall into nihilism? Nihilism or nihilism.
I mean, first of all, deconstructivism is not the same than constructivism, right? Constructivism is something, like a cell does construct itself, it creates.
Okay, autopoiesis and construct, got it. Yeah.
So, and then you have to see that, okay, so what happened in the end of modernity and the beginning of postmodernity? So let's say two things. Because we're talking about Magick. So there was like Crowley happened and Nietzsche happened, and they were happening at the same time. And so what Nietzsche basically said, or like one thing he said was, okay, like a philosophy of somebody primarily says something about the originator, the philosopher himself. Because it says something about his biases, about his perspectives, and all of this. And this is basically the same idea. It's autopoiesis. Yeah. And so you have to see that if you talk to people that talk about the state of the world, let's take Russell Brand because he's such a popular figure. He kind of forgets that he's talking basically about his perception of the world. He pretends as if he is commenting on the world. But this is the old paradigm. The new paradigm, the postmodern paradigm, is like, oh, no. You talk about your preferences. You're talking about your perceptions. And you could do this differently, right? And so he's kind of reinforcing the perspectives that he creates about the world and pretends, oh, no, that has nothing to do with him. But this is still a modern kind of way of approaching, oh, no, I'm just commenting on the world. Nobody is just commenting anymore. And so it's like the constructive aspect is like, oh no, with our perceptions, with our distinctions and our, what's the word? With our acts, we create the world we are living in. And this is like hugely constructive. There's nothing nihilist about this. It's quite the opposite, because every speech act creates worlds. And if you're like, and that then self-authorship and construct awareness from Cook-Reuter starts, the idea that, oh no, if we are just aware of how we think and if we are aware of how we speak, then we are aware of the worlds we are creating with it. And that's the dance that you do with other people and the world. There's no nihilism in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, okay, yeah, maybe I'm holding on to some essentialist view of things or something. Maybe it's a tendency of mine. But I guess the idea is a dynamism.
Right.
Right. So that there isn't these essential archetypes. There are these dynamic archetypes in movement, which are shifting, changing. Even our memories of things are always changing. So there's no actual like history can't be absolutized in any way, because whatever our memory is of the past now is shifting and changing, and history is shifting and changing. So there's always this. But then again, is there anything that we can pin down and say, this is real?
I mean, it depends. Yeah, it depends what you mean with essential, because if you look into the deep history of humankind, like an image, like a woman gives birth and the man protects the woman, that's an archetypal essential image. You can't change that. And it's like, and that's because it happens all the time, everywhere. And it's such a deep part of our psyche, this image. Independently of that, that is also like connected to our biology for sure, but like from the psychological viewpoint, that's such an essential image of our mimetic like upbringing, right? And there you have a heroic archetype that is essential in that sense, right?
So we're on the same page here then. Yeah, sure. Yeah. There's biological sort of realities, which people seem to be really gung-ho about, trying to bend and break and distort and
again, I think,
and make it all up, right?
I think it's more complicated, because even from the postmodernist view, even the notion of the biological realm, even if it's there, even if you can say, yeah, there is a biological realm, the only way you can know about it is because you create the mental concept of it. And that's structurally coupled.
You create the mental concept of it.
Yeah, a baby doesn't know anything about the biological substrate. It has to learn this, right? It is a learned, although there is biology, you still have to learn it. And as an adult, self-authoring kind of person, you have to be able to hold both perspectives in your two hands, that yes, it's a real reality, and yes, you only know this because you have learned this concept.
Yeah, and it's a real reality. It's still provisional. Like, in other words, everything is sort of provisional.
Right.
Everything is kind of provisional. Nothing can be pinned down to any absolute frozen static state.
The best example that I think Ernst von Glasersfeld, this is like this famous German systems theorist, and he talks about the boundary that we draw between our inner world and the outer world, right? And you can't, it's really hard to pinpoint where exactly that boundary is when you close your eyes and you think, oh, that's inside and that's outside. And he argues, a child doesn't know, like an infant, like a baby.
Doesn't have inside and outside. There's no inside and outside.
Exactly. It's a learned boundary, right? It's a learned boundary. And it's like, and he used it as example for basically all distinctions that we draw. It's like it's like a child doesn't know what a door is, a baby. It has to learn the concept of, oh, there's a hole in the wall and I can go through it. And that's a concept.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there is not a door, but it means the baby. And so it's the term for this is object-permanence, because for
a child learns object-permanence.
So it's like the child learns, okay, that door is like I can go through, and it stays like this. So the visual field and the sensual field is just a blur for the infant. And it has to learn, and that doesn't mean that the substructure, the biological, is not there, but for the individual, it is acquired concepts. And if you're going back to Nietzsche and all of this, is like, if you have somebody like Russell Brand talking about the world, it's like, no, it's not that easy. It's his prevalences. It's, what I mean, about observing.
Yeah, but what are you suggesting, Russell? How are you suggesting Russell Brand recalibrate? I like his view. Should he not comment on the world as if it was an objective thing?
Oh no, he long ago fell off the cliff. There's nothing he can do to redeem himself. It's really that. I mean, it's like because he's like two-tongued. He says like, oh, he's all spiritual and wisdom teachings, and then he pretends if the modernist world is real, and so it's like, oh no, that's weird. That's lacking internal coherence.
Okay.
Because he's not acting on that which he supposedly knows about the world.
Well, I was thinking about journalism, actually, and I was thinking about how journalism is mostly fake, right? It's mostly does that, right? It's mostly creates a false kind of object permanence, right? It says this is this and this is that and this is that and this is the other thing. And it also creates divisions between people. It creates categories about what's happening in the world. It does all these things. And maybe there's some journalism, but what is lacking in journalism is the soul. This is what I was, which is a ridiculous word to many people, but I was thinking about the difference between if I'm engaged in a writing project and I say, okay, this is alive, this has soul, or a music that has soul, and this is a simulacrum, this is an opinion, this is mere political commentary, this is just blah blah blah, right?
Right.
We're not really curious or interested. We're just giving, we're just siding with one group against the other. We're kind of in the cultural war, and we've got a team, and we're going for our team, but all that is fake, right? It's all kind of fake, in the sense that it's not real. It's not really music. It's more like opinionating.
Right.
So I was thinking, like, okay, how do you do journalism with soul, and I think there's probably some soulful journalism out there, but most of it doesn't cut it.
Well, it's like, again, Luhmann, his last book, Niklas Luhmann, the German sociologist, and his last book was The Reality of the Mass Media. And that was like 97, maybe 90 or 95, I don't know. Like, and so he says that the age of the journalist who attempts to describe the world objectively, it's over, because now we know that media is also like an autopoietic system. It's creating stories, it's creating narratives for the sole purpose that you can create more narratives. And so the environment, the journalist, they kind of perpetuating the system, but his famous words are, everything, the first words from the book, everything that we know about the world, we know through mass media. And so he describes the system that is kind of void of soul, what you might mean, and this is like, okay, that's the age of prophelicity, that, it's like, it's the age of spin. It's like, it doesn't, there's a very famous German journalist who says that in the United States, the journalists expect to have ideological biases and expect to appear as educators. And that is like a huge shift of the paradigm of journalism, let's say from 100 years ago, where you are supposed to not biased, supposed to
speak truth to power or whatever.
Whatever. But this is not the paradigm anymore. The paradigm is, oh no, it's arbitrary constructions in a kind of way, and so the journalists have to be biased ideologically, But
isn't that a recipe for pure evil in a way? Like, if there is no truth claim anywhere, I don't know. I just like that. Isn't that the whole fake news thing? Isn't that the whole idea of the performative contradiction? There's no truth, yet I'm declaring an absolute truth here, that there's no truth. I think
that's the dark side of it, because I mean, there's obviously some truth to the claim of Luhmann, but this is also the kind of the reason why fake news.
Was he celebrating that?
Huh?
Was he celebrating that? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, he was a sociologist. He was just describing it. He was describing how media or social systems in general are operating. Like, he was describing the autopoiesis, this self-organizing, self-creating mechanism. He was not, and that was like before the advent of social media. That was like, again, 96. There was no fake news like kind of problem that we have now. It was just, he was just looking how the system works. And so he was like one of the first ones who did this with media. And so, but you can see why there is a problem with fake news, because of that very mechanism. And I think, you can't get rid of media as a system, but you have to kind of go with it and find a new way to operate.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was struggling with, in writing my blog. Well, I mean, the reason I thought of it was that I started a few years ago. I was writing this blog, and it got kind of popular, and I was commenting on Rebel Wisdom and things like that, and I was writing about Jordan Peterson and people like that, or just cultural figures, intellectuals on YouTube, and I was just ranting on Medium, basically, about my feelings for the day, and then I stopped doing it because it felt like I was being captured myself and becoming a voice in the cultural war,
right,
and I didn't want to be that. It felt like that's where the loss of soul came in, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly I was so I used to write songs, and I used to write in this very creative, exploratory. Well, I still had the beginner mind. And as soon as I started to have to try to say something about somebody, about something, and I was expected to comment on what Daniel Schmachtenberg thinks, or then I recoiled very strongly against that. I couldn't do it. But then this leaves me in a place where, okay, how does, I guess this is parallax, right? How do we speak in this new? How do we speak with actual soulfulness in this particular environment?
Right. And so because I mean, there's this guy, I talked about him before, this Professor Möller from the University of Macau. And he also talks about this paradigm shift. We're talking about in this podcast, call it eons or paradigms or modernity, post-modernity, meta-modernity, whatever. And so for him, it's the transformation of the age of authenticity to the age of prophylicity. So in modernity, you were like, oh no, we like to talk like authentically about the world, about ourselves, right? And that completely with social media, that kind of changed. And now it's not about truthfulness and truth and authenticity. It's about profile building. And as soon as you engage in Twitter or whatever, it's like you create this kind of mechanism where everything you say, you're operating under the paradigm and the incentive that everything that you say should add to your profile and
to your profile, and also you're fighting with good opinion.
Right.
You're fighting with whatever people believe. You're fighting with the egregores of the society. You're struggling with them, right? And you're trying to put your voice in, like, okay.
And
you're vulnerable to being attacked because you might slip up, so you have to be very careful about how you do it.
Right, and you're working under the incentive to comment on Schmachtenberger or Rebel Wisdom or whatever, because you're entering, you can't really leave that social strata, that social field, that social, kind of sense of how to deal, and with the world. And I think you're completely right. What we're doing with Parallax is like, okay, let's play with this. Let's try to find the authenticity in our kind of cultural context and oscillate between, profile, because we're also doing profile building here now.
Yeah. We don't want to be naive or anything.
No, it's like, we explicitly say this is parallax, this is profile building, right? But at the same time, we try to bring something else to the thing instead of just being against, opinionated bullshit, and so it's both, and we try to have
because because there is a sort of there's these, again, I can't think of a better word for them than egregores, right? They look to be authentic, right? They appear authentic, like the intellectual deep web, a bunch of smart guys. Dark web, sorry, the intellectual dark web, it was originally called. Bunch of super smart guys getting together, and they have conversations, and then they create an egregore. In other words, they create a set of beliefs. It's a sort of a right-wing liberal left, liberal anti-leftist movement, which has a lot of good things to say. But then talking points are created, and one just sort of repeats those talking points, and then there are parasitical, or people who hang on to that sort of in a parasitical way and kind of repeat those talking points and blah blah blah, and then you have something very uninteresting that started off as something a little bit provocative, and then it becomes just another. It becomes a simsum, as they say in the Jewish tradition. It becomes a shell. It becomes a hardened, reified set of concepts which people identify with in order to have some tribal familiarity, in order to feel cool and all those things. But there's no thinking going on there anymore.
Right.
There's no feeling either.
Yeah, it's the condensed tower. It's like the fixed structure, and I think. Because I think, again, going back to the series on Magick, it's about how we create realities, but it's not an ending process, because we have to be aware that everything which we do, like talk about and form cognitions about, these are like constructions, and you have to.
And they fall apart.
Yeah, but you have to engage with those constructions in a kind of way, but at the same time know there are constructions, and it's like you have to have the cognitive complexity to stop pretending that what you're commenting about is not the real world. It's like you have to act in a way as to pretend that what you're saying is true while knowing that it's not. And that is like a kind of paradox. And you have to hold that paradox. You know, that it's like, oh no, that's just my, you know, it's my way of being in the world, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. Right?
It doesn't have an ultimate reality. It's like a good artist is able to use a lot of masks. They don't make their personality the center, or who they don't have any like even the authentic ones. Like, so there's something, you know, like Bruce Springsteen, his image is authenticity, and that's completely fake. You know,
of course,
but yet there is authenticity in his music. But the persona that he's projecting is theatrical. It's not real, even though it pretends to be authentic. Like he's like a working guy or something from America, where he's nothing of the sort.
Yeah, it's beautiful what you say, because that's one of the, I think, major stepping stones in meditation, that you realize, oh no, there's nobody at home. Everything that I construct about everything that I know about myself are constructions, like condensed memories and, you know, reactivated feelings, and, you know, but there is nothing there. It's like, and that is a truly shocking moment from meditation, when you look so deep into the abyss that you think, and then the abyss looks back, to recount Nietzsche again, because there's nobody at home. There's no essential Andrewness within you, or an essential Tomness which is in me. No, it's just an autopoietic process of creating images and feelings and everything.
And yet it's like a fractal, and yet it's not completely without form either, in the sense that it appears, right? You know, because, you know, I'm thinking of emptiness in Buddhism is like mere emptiness is thought of as a mistaken view, or just apophatic nothingness.
Yes,
is not the full view. It's kind of, that's where you get stuck in nihilism. There's no thing. There's nothing. Everything exactly. is empty, etc., etc. They call that attachment to emptiness, or whatever. The next stage after the apophatic nothingness, no thingness, right, is again luminosity. Is that we still exist in a dense array of forms of expression. You know, they're dynamic, but they're still forms. They're mandalas. They still have shapes and they express themselves. And there's a playful expressiveness to that.
Exactly. And so that's why I love the concept of autopoiesis, because if you look inside, you have this process that brings all these forms, you know, self-images, images about the world, and memes and theories and memories and feelings, and brings forth in a continuous flow of bringing forth form. But that and this is counterbalanced by the void, and so you have to hold both. You know, you could say, yes, I am this bringing forth of form, but at the same time, there's nothing else there. There's no little glowing ball of gold, which is Andrew inside. That is, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You can't reify. I like to use the word soul. You can't reify the soul as something.
Right.
You know, I like the word soul because it's unfashionable and kind of weird. And we talk about psyche a lot, because psyche is the mind and mental things, but the soul is the embodied. I think of it as the embodied reality, and I think of it as the direction of the going in the future. I think of it as this the becoming. Because there is a becoming. There is a process of becoming, and then there's the empty, and then there's also and also there's nowhere to be and nowhere to go, and nothing. There is no thing, and at the same time, there's a process of becoming.
Right.
So it's always paradoxical, right?
Right. And so I talk in the series about the system drift, you know, because the place of becoming. So again, Nietzsche, and I think you mentioned, like in the introduction, I talk about the process of integration, right? And so there was the God image, and Nietzsche, let's simplify, that killed him. and says, okay, now we're striving for the Superman, for the Overman. But that was nothing that, oh no, we should do it. That was like just a plain statement of fact that there is a system drift, that there is something which Peter Sloterdijk, the German philosopher, calls the vertical tension, that there's like a point in the future that like attracts like a gravitational pull, and we're going there. And it's not yet clear what it is. And so we are always like future driven. We are always, this autopoietic process drifts in this creation of imagery and of all of this, drifts in a certain way of becoming, of being in the world. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, but
that's evolutionary process, right?
Yes, exactly.
I think is what you're talking about. Evolution just is a constant messy experiment with forms.
There's a system drift, exactly. That in a long view, as like, let's say, galaxies drift out of each other and kind of differentiate and merge towards their ultimate form, which is never achieved, basically. But there is a drift, and so also our evolutionary form as conscious beings drifts in a certain kind of way, always creating like a perfect form and always shedding that form in favor of a new form, and so
I was thinking of the book of Job in the Bible, and so Job is the perfect man. He has everything. So the reason that he has to lose everything is because of his perfection,
right?
And that's what happens is because he has no soul. If you're perfect, you have no soul, because the soul is a state of dynamic becoming.
Right.
So I was thinking that Job loses everything, and goes, and the Job archetype is kind of built into the nature of reality. It's like, okay, you have a crisis, and then you have a struggle, and then you have a new vision of the whale or the Leviathan, or you have a new vision. Okay, and then that becomes reified as something that you think is real and is solid, and you and then you have to go through that whole Job process again. But I also learned something about the Job story, is that the happy ending, where he gets everything back and God's like nice, was actually a later addition to the story. So Job doesn't, when Job loses everything, he doesn't get anything back. He doesn't get his old life back, or he doesn't go to heaven and meet his relatives, and he doesn't. His perspective has changed so radically that he can now that whatever circumstance he's in connection to his soul,
right?
No matter what that circumstance it is. So anyway,
it's lovely. What I always find so interesting, and I think that was the instigating idea that I had for this series, that there are like phenomena that were like traditionally describable only through religion and spirituality, but there are some things that I don't think that you can completely describe the whole corpus of Magick with terms of philosophy and psychology and, let's say, system theory, but you can describe a huge chunk of it, and so that was the idea, to approach, phenomena like what you just described, where you use like a kind of religious language. You can also describe it with complexity theory or systems theory, with evolutionary terms in a kind of way, and with psychology. And so to approach this this kind of corpus of Magick, and to find a language that is more modern in a kind of way and describe it, because like we're talking about the same thing, and I think there's value in the corpus per se, and also the argument that I made, like Magick is not only 150 years old, it's like 2,000 years old. It went through iterations, right? And so like from the Mithridatic cults over to alchemy to Magick with a K. So there's like a iteration of like every 150, 200, 300 years, a new language is employed, a new iteration. It's like the same thing. The old forms are getting shedded in forms of a new form, of a new way of describing it. And so there's also like an autopoietic process within magic itself, right? Where it drifts in time. And so it's the same thing. It's like the myth of Job attributed to magic as a system. And so there's a thing,
or to alchemy, or to everything, right?
It's
kind of why I stick to these old stories, is because they're infinitely subtle. So you can be trapped in a mythological view of them, right?
Yeah.
Where you just say it's like a children's story, right? A Harry Potter thing, a fairy tale, or you can keep. The thing about these old stories is they keep giving you they keep undressing themselves and giving you a new dimension of reality, making reality more naked and more. So you can work with the old stories, I think, still. And I tend to go in the opposite direction of what you were describing, because I think we are trying to scientize, philosophize, psychologize everything today.
Right.
And there is something kind of soulless about that, because we make it technical, right? And so I think going back to, let's say, the mythopoetics of it kind of balances that masculine autistic desire to put everything in boxes and bullet points and slides, just trying to. But on the other hand, of course, and again, science, and also to point out that science also brings these poetic metaphors as well, and they can all dance with each other, like autopoiesis and things like that. But I like the resonance of old magic words and old magic stories, and I like the deep resonance of that.
Right.
I was reading Andrew Cohen's book, and I liked it. It was fine, but he was using a very modern language. I thought it's too modern. It would be enriched by more mystery, by more mythopoetics, by more. Anyway.
No, I get that. Sure. I think that's perfectly valuable, that approach. I was just like my point from which to, my angle was just like I was looking at the history of magic. And let's just the last 500 years. And so there are iterations that they have nothing to do with me. It's like, okay, it's my prevalence to observe it like this, but let's pretend there was an evolution in the system of magic, and you could see that there were like some mechanisms. So the alchemical process was that, okay, let's actually try to change the metals in order to get to gold and to purify our soul. And then you have like these things with John Dee and Eliphas Levi and Crowley, and like in the different centuries, and you can see clear demarcations between these different iterations. If you look at the writings, you could see they gradually becoming more and more and more psychologically sound, right? It's like they get more precise what actually happens. And it's not about actually changing the metals, it's something about yourself. And then suddenly, let me just finish. And then suddenly you come to Crowley's magic and theory and practice, and you could see that psychology today still is feeding off of the kind of insights that he had. Like, let's say, like, what's this book called? Integral Psychology von Wilber. That's basically a remake of a Crowley book called Liber 777. It's the same thing. And so psychology is like kind of feeding off, and so what I feel like that the language from Crowley still works, but you can give a bend to it, you can precise some things, because we have developed the language of, let's say, constructivism to better understand like why a ritual works. It doesn't mean, it's like, why did we develop a need for ritual, and why does it work? and so we have a more precise language, and what I try to do is like give the language of magic a little bit of a spin, so it's more adapted to where we are now, right? And so that was just my angle. That doesn't mean that your angle is kind of wrong. It's like,
oh no, I was not criticizing your angle at all. I thought it was more like a complementary difference than a criticism. And my butt is though, when we make everything explicit, you know, I mean, you know, again, Ken Wilber, great genius, beautiful man. His writing is lacking in that. It's very technical or something, right? He's very feeling as well, but he doesn't. But I feel like he takes on the scientific worldview and psychology, and while he's aware of all of the and he embraces the spiritual path of mysticism, we lose something when we make things explicit, when I don't know how to say that. So the butt was like, okay, yes, we're getting more technically able to understand certain things, and this is just the advance of knowledge. And then we're also losing something at the same time. Like we're losing our ability to think mythopoetically and to think, you know, think symbolically and to think in terms of, you know, observing our dreams and that kind of thing.
I would say yes and no to this, because yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but you know, it's like what I'm trying to do, or what I try to do, is look at the term occult itself. It means there's always something, you know, which is opaque. There's always something known, and there's always something opaque. And what does it like? How could you understand this opaqueness, which still persists? But how could you understand it from a philosophical or psychological point of view? And so if you let's say if you turn your attention to future as a concept, this is like one example, right? So my argument is, and it also comes from psychology, that you know the invention of future was one of the greatest invention of humankind. You know, we stepped out of the garden of the infinite now, and there's suddenly a concept of the future. And the future always has like this dual nature. It can bring forth absolute glory and peace and joy and life, but it can also like kind of bring the absolute unexpected, which is able to completely destroy you. And so in this matrix of possibilities, this future kind of concept, there's an opaqueness in there, you know, which is like able to manifest in its kind of way. And you know, it just, you know what I mean? It's like the occult, the future is still occult in a kind of way.
Oh yeah.
So, and it's like, and it's what Peterson called the wrestle with chaos. If you have a goal, you set out to do something, then you invoke the occult, then you invoke the future, because you don't know what will happen on the path towards the goal, what kind of dreams come, which kind of images come, what kinds of obstacles are coming. And so the occult, the opaque thing is still there, but it's like it's framed differently. You know what I'm saying? And that's like the phallic kind of approach. So because like it depends on where you set your fixed star, on what kind of phenomena will emerge and occur. Because if you choose a different goal, then something other will pop out the occult, the future, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was thinking when you're talking about the conflict between Jung and Freud, and when you know Freud accused Jung of sort of like opening up the doors of the black tide of the occult or something like that. That's what he said, because he was still working in a realm where they believed in sort of this rational progress. Right. He still had a utopian view of rational progress, I think. And
Yeah.
Jung was like, no, that's where I want to look in that dark occult. Like that's um so there's I think that I mean they're both right in a way. It's not like they split in terms of their friendship, but in another way they had to go in the way they had to go. And Freud kind of laid out the pleasure principle pretty well. But then the next step, right, is the next step is kind of like is kind of like going from proposition to magic and music and dream, and which is kind of like the phallic is there, but it also is bringing the Holy Spirit of the feminine into a dance with itself.
Right. You know what's interesting? The interesting is that, the split between Freud and Jung, that's exactly what we're talking about in terms of, the paradigm shift, because it's not about who was right, it's about, no, there is this biological reality, and then there's the construction aspect of it. And it's like, you have to hold them both in your hands. And so they're Jung and Freud, are true at the same time. And this is like a paradoxical thing, and you have to hold them in your hand both. You know what I'm saying? And that kind
true
of
and opposite at this, even if they seem to contradict each other, they're still true, or even if they do, or
both
whatever.
are true. Both are true, and they're both not true. And it's like, and they're both true in some sense. Let's go back at this, So, and this kind of reflects,
But it's interesting
where we are.
Well, it's interesting because Freud was very serious about being empirical and being a scientist. And we know now that what is interesting about Freud is not his irrational empiricism, it's his wild speculation, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And complete occultism. And also, and Jung, it turns out when you read Jung, although he expressed himself in this very occult, bizarre way, and he's very hard to read, and he probably wasn't as good a writer as Jung. He was just sort of recording what was going on in his, and he was very medieval or something. So it appears that Jung was very, very, very occult or something, or like a mystic. But Jung was often just recording dreams of schizophrenic patients. Like he was he was in there and doing the science. So in a way there's a contradiction there too. Is like the guy who's supposed to be the empiricist and the rationalist or whatever turns out to be sort of animated by the occult, and the supposed occultist is being very kind of like empirical,
like yin and yang. Super interesting.
Super interesting. And then they fight with each other. That they always, and there's this split, right?
Yeah,
which always happens too, which is interesting. Like this, the Cain and Abel thing happens, right? Whereas there's too much identification. So the two of them are too close, and there's this identification, and there needs to get to a point where they have enough distance from each other where they can fully, or at least Jung had to distance himself from Freud, and Freud had to say, go out in the wilderness to Jung.
So, it should have been more gay, I think, and the problem would have been solved very easily.
Yeah. I think I think Freud was more gay than Jung. Well, no, I don't know. Jung was he had a lot of women around him. Jung had a lot of women around him all the time.
Not gay enough, Andrew. Not gay enough. I'm telling you.
Not gay enough. Yeah, but Freud was very sympathetic to gay people for his time. He was kind of.
The world would be completely different if they were just plowing each other, and the
Greeks and the Romans knew about that.
Yeah, but imagine, and Wilhelm Reich in the middle as a judge, it's like as an orgiastic judge, just like, oh no, Sigmund, go harder on Karl, go harder.
They should have just fucked each other, like
that's what I'm talking about.
It would have been okay. That people,
the world would be different.
More men should have sex with each other, even if they're not gay.
Yeah, exactly. No, but imagine how. I'm
not that interested in that. I'm an old man. I don't need to go there. But maybe when I was a young guy, I think that would have been a good thing for me to have more sex with men.
No, but this game of sexual innuendo. Now, who's on top? So Sigmund fucking Carl Jung und Alvarez, who's on top and who's the bottom?
Who's the bottom? Yeah, I think Sigmund really liked to be on top, but he had a secret desire to be on the bottom at the same time.
So Carl is on top or what?
Carl ends up to be on top, and it starts off with Sigmund just going at him, right?
Maybe it's the circle of life. It goes all around.
Sigmund is just going bomb, 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 bomb with the rationality and the bomb, bomb, bomb.
Yeah, he plows.
And then he kind of gets exhausted of his rationality, and then finally,
he can give in.
Carl can get on top,
right,
and give him what he really needs.
I think we.
You can see where my biases are, but
yeah, no, I think we settled it. You know, good that we solved that issue.
Indeed, yeah.